Welcome back to the Unboxed broadcast. Today is part two of our conversation, The Secret to Connecting with Your Team. We're ready to dive in. We're excited you're here. So stick around as we unbox the power and potential of your leadership.
I'm Dr. Robert Davis, family life educator and leadership coach. This is my co-host, R.P. Soriano. Soriano attended Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, worked in the financial industry, and was an international consultant before partnering with me to launch UnBoxed to Lead. Me? Well, I worked for over 20 years as a senior pastor and a community organizer. Then I retired and started a leaders peer support community called UnBoxed to Lead. Soriano and I have been friends since the early 90s, and with our varied experiences and expertise, we help leaders reach the next level in their leadership. So join us for the next few moments as we unbox the power and the potential of your relationships, your leadership, and your life.
All right, before we dive in, I just want to remind everyone to please like, share, and subscribe to the broadcast. Also, be sure to follow all of our social pages. Visit our blog page at www.unboxedtolead.com, where you can access past episodes to our broadcasts and webinars. You can also sign up for our newsletter so you never miss out on any of the latest content or specials that we offer for our services. Okay, Robert, so let's dive into part two of the secret to connecting with our team.
And I'm glad you said it, because, if a person is just, if a person uses the N word or the F word or something like that in regards to someone's sexual orientation, then that's grounds for termination. That's pretty easy to deal with.
Yeah, but then there's those microaggressions, right?
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah,
it's those microaggressions. And sometimes it's not even towards us. We're watching our colleague who is, a Vietnamese immigrant, and the person is talking to them because their English is not the strongest. The person is talking to them in very slow, childish type of tones, infantile tones, and we see ourselves getting flustered and frustrated. And I think it's important. I'm glad you brought that up. It's important because if we don't work through those relationships, then again, we're never going to master them. The third reason why it's so important to stay connected, even with difficult people, as well as people that we love, is working with various personalities and levels of emotional functioning allows us to establish a baseline of our own functioning. That's what I talked about, listening to understand yourself. So as I'm watching someone else and I'm like, man, they get on my last and they don't know what to say out of their mouths, then I'm noticing, hold on, that in many ways resembles my functioning. I'm actually upset with what I see about themselves. And so it helps me that's one of the ways it helps me to establish a baseline of how I function. But it also helps me to establish a baseline of, okay, how long am I able to stay in conversation with this person? The first time I noticed that they annoyed me, I was only able to stay in conversation with them beyond, specific work-related conversations for 1 minute. Now, a year later, I've noticed, I got my baseline now. Now, I've noticed that I'm able to stay in conversation with them for 15 minutes. You can actually sense the progress, which leads us to number four.
Well, can I ask you a quick question on that too? Is that baseline also where you are? I mean, I get what you're saying. Is that also, I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around here is, okay, so I've been able to start my conversation with this person. I've been able to, I do it 5 minutes before I feel like jumping out of the window, and then 15 minutes, 20 minutes, on and on and on. It's also like, where was my baseline emotionally when I knew that I had to meet with this person or I had to be in conversation with them? Did I come in at a 10 emotionally? I've known that with experiences with people, family members, and people professionally, where I come in hot. I mean, I come in at a 10. There's really no room. There's really absolutely no room to go. I mean, I'm already on a scale of 1 to 10. I've already walked in at a 10. And so my fuse is so short. The person can probably say hello and I erupt.
Yeah. What do you mean hello? I had an uncle of mine that used to say, you would say good morning to him. He said, well, what's good about it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and right there, yeah, what's good about it, right? Oh, here we go.
yeah.
But so I think I was just thinking that when you said that that baseline piece is, where am I in my feelings and my emotions once I know the conversation has to get started. Can I cool the temperature down a little bit? What can I tell myself? How can I think this through so that I'm just not ready? And I think you can do that. And then I think you also have to be aware of the other part of that is how quick, because maybe you can cool the fire down a little bit, get it down to a 4 or 5, but how quick do you get back to 10 when you're dealing with this person?
And that leads us right into the number four. That's a perfect segue because working with various personalities and levels of emotional functioning allows us to become creative and to create personal interventions and experiments. Again, leaders have to think like scientists a lot of times and have to approach problems and approach relationships from a very scientific perspective. And one aspect of that is, okay, let me try this intervention. I notice that this person is very short and throws little pot shots at people's suggestions. Let me try this intervention. Let me see if this works. Let me gauge it. So now I can become creative on how I'm going to manage myself and how I'm going to create a healthy environment so that this person also doesn't ruin it for everybody else without making a big blow up about it. How am I going to do that? And so now I'm starting to play around with things. And I'll be honest with you, when you become creative, when you become playful, and you say, let me try this. Let me see if this works. Let me see how this approach works. Man, that lowers the temperature, the level of anxiety so much
Mhm.
so. As soon as you're able to genuinely start working toward solutions within how you're going to function and become creative, it leads to a certain amount of playfulness. And man, it is fun. I mean, you think about great scientists who just observe and study, and they say, what will happen if we move these bees over to a whole nother pasture? And then they just sit there and study that. Well, what would happen, man, if we did this and if we did that? And they're reporting it. It's just they're just loving it.
Yeah.
And as leaders, if we do the same thing about how we're improving our relationships with others, let me get creative here. Let me go to number five. Number five is working with various personalities and levels of emotional functioning helps us to identify our growth. And I talked about that just a second ago, as well as where we still need additional work. Over time, when our relationships have improved consistently, we can look back and see and feel the difference. And man, it's a good feeling. It is a good feeling to be able to say, I have grown. It helps you as a leader because when different other difficult people arise, you can actually say, you know what? I was able to handle Jim. Jan is not going to be a problem. We if we solved the Jim, we can definitely solve the Jan. Let's get at it. And I can start doing the exact same things. And then the last one, number six, the last one is working with various personalities and levels of emotional functioning enables us to enjoy life more because less stuff is able to phase us. And that's the good thing. I had a deacon of mine when I first started pastoring in Louisiana, and his expression was this right here: don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. And man, I remember I came with my hair on fire about everything. I'm very hard working. And so I was always had some project, some mission, some community that needed saving that I had to get out there and save. And Pastor, come, that's gonna be okay. No, it's not gonna be okay. We're starting 5 minutes late, and the choir's not even out of the choir room yet. And services were supposed to start at 11, and it's 11:05. Ah! And he's like, Pastor, calm down. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. I mean, first of all, it's sad that I, the pastor, had to have someone, you know, putting the water on my fire to get to calm me down. But but it was amazing. It was amazing that I was able to take that into other facets of my leadership. And when you work with different personalities, you have these successes, man, less of life phases you.
Yeah.
Less of life phases you, just
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
I think the takeaway here from what I hear you really saying here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this really is about your growth as a leader.
Yeah.
You're the person on the other side of you, you're not really all that concerned. And maybe that's not the best language to use, but you're not hyper focused on changing them. And I think a lot of the frustration that we have when we're dealing with difficult people, whether it's in our personal relationships or whether it's in our professional relationships, is we keep thinking that there's going to be a change on that person's side of it. And we keep waiting for that. We keep thinking that our interactions with them, all of the things that you're talking about now, the skills, the mentality, the way of thinking about it, that you're actually going to change the person. But that's not really what I hear you saying. What I really hear you saying is, how do you become a master of you, and how do you create the environment that people can function and thrive in, but you're not really necessarily changing anyone. That's kind of on their end to do, and you're not really responsible for that. Is that?
No, that's it. Robert Jr. is about to put something up on the screen here. We call it Serenity Prayer 2.0.
Okay.
And we have that slide in our things in our backgrounds. But anyway, it just says, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept I cannot change people, courage to change the only person I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mhm.
To your point, Raphael, all that we do is about our improvement. I can't make anybody else improve. I can create an environment for growth. One of the things I've really learned, planting a garden, is that I can create the environment. There are techniques to make the soil ideal for tomatoes, or the soil to be ideal for cucumbers. I had to do some other stuff to make the soil ideal for the collard greens that I planted. And man, those collard greens were good. Wow! But you can't make it grow. You can only create the environment for the growth to take place. That's what we as leaders create the environment. We create the atmosphere. The culture is the buzzword. We create the culture of the organization, but we can't make anybody. And so the focus has to be on me. The focus has to be on how I show up, how I function, how I'm governing myself, because I really can't change anyone else. I can't change them. I can fire, I can hire, I can suspend, I can, do all kinds of other stuff. But what I can't do is I cannot change people. And
Yeah.
we saw that, just real quick, last point on this, I'm sorry.
That's right.
We're seeing that as a nation. We can pass laws, and I'm glad that we have, with the Civil Rights Act of 1965 and other laws that we have passed over the time, to try to mitigate the impact of people's racism and biases and prejudices. But no governmental law can change the hearts of men. If people are racist, biased, prejudiced, or whatever, that it is what it is. And so what I have to do is realize that I can't change, but I can create a culture, an environment, so that change can take place. You want to say something?
No, I was just going to take a little quick break here. I'm RP Soriano here with Dr. Robert Davis, and you're watching Unboxed, and we are discussing the secret to connecting with your team. We're talking about how to do that, why it's important to be able to do this, dealing with difficult people, and the focus being on changing ourselves as individuals and managing our emotions, and not necessarily trying to change anyone else. We're basically just trying to see how we function, how we can function in the situation. And just like you said, Robert, is create the environment to be able to do this. And I think that all leaders, one of the things that's characteristic of or common in leaders, is that I think that every leader wants to master their craft. I think they want to be, that's what drives them, want to be the best leader that they can be. And so they won't run away from the hard work. And this is definitely hard work. So if it's okay with you, can we get into a little bit of the how? Can we move into that? Are we ready to move into that? Uh,
I was so excited about theory. Uh, as in most universities, they get so excited about theory that they never actually tell you practically. And there's one theory about how you can get rid of cancer, and here's another theory. All right, well,
mm.
can you give me some practical?
Theoretically speaking, that because that is to get excited about. We always say, theoretically speaking, it should work. I should be able to launch this rocket up into the sky, and these kinds of things should happen theoretically. But then you get up there, it's a whole
Theoretically.
different. You get up
So
there, it's a
here's the
whole
practical.
on
You ready
paper.
for the practical?
That's what people say. People say on paper, on paper, on paper it should work. But what do I do when this misogynist in this meeting is talking down to me as a woman leader, or as a woman on the team, and this individual is talking down to me and basically is making it seem like the only thing I should be doing in this meeting is getting everybody coffee.
Exactly.
How do I manage that? How do I deal with that? I get that on paper I should be able to manage that. I get what you say on paper, Dr. Davis. You got 12 steps of becoming an unboxed leader that you wrote about on paper, but how do I do this?
Now, I think you may have done a little overselling, because we're not going to get into all of that. We're getting in how to stay connected.
Yes, how to get connected, right?
How to stay connected.
Stay connected.
I think about Richard Pryor in Which Way Is Up, when the guy told the pastor, I want to jump, I want to run. He said, you want an awful lot for $2. So I mean, we're not going to give them all of that. We're going to give them all of that. How to stay connected. And
well, they can get all of that. They can get all of that by becoming a member of the Leaders Peer Support Community, right? That's the whole point.
I love it.
So there you go. All right.
Now, and true to the unboxed model, I would love for everyone who's listening to just drop into the comments ways that you have managed relationships, especially how you stay connected. In the interview that we had with Jules, she talked about being on the outside, and when she was in Africa, she was on the outside. When she came to America, she was the outsider, and then how she uses that to inform her interaction with her team. And she gave some very clear ways that she listens to her team, talks and connects with the different members of her team. And so I would love to hear from each of you on how you do just that. How do you stay connected with people? And if you're not a leader, talk about how you stay connected with various family members that get on your, as my mom would say, to get on your last nerve. So talk about that. Put that in the chat. So here's a couple of steps that I want to share on how we can stay connected. And the first part of it, and this is the most important part in my opinion, is to identify the significant relationships on your team. Because I don't want to spread you too thin. I've talked about this before. Not everybody on your team is a significant relationship, especially those of us who lead larger organizations. And you have 150 people, the real 200 people or whatever. The reality is, you're not in contact with all 200 of them, other than, when you have a big team meeting and you all meet in a conference room or, auditorium somewhere, and you give a nice rah, rah, rah speech. But each of us have a certain core group that we're required to work with. And I need you to identify who is on your team. And I want you, number two, to think about, I'm working in sixes today. Number two, I want you to think about how you are currently, if you've identified each one of them, think about how your relationship currently looks. Become clear about the feelings that you have. And it may be a spectrum. So it may be, I feel great talking with this individual around this time when this is going on. I dread talking to them when this is going on. I love interacting with them when they're doing this. Oh, I hate interacting with them when they're doing that. So kind of become clear. That's number two. Number one, identify them. And then number two, become clear about how the relationship currently looks. Because if you're not clear about how it currently looks, it's difficult to really develop a strategy to get where you want it to be.
Okay.
So become clear about how the relationship currently looks.
Okay.
Raphael and I'm gonna let y'all in on behind the scenes. Raphael and I, we tease each other mercilessly. And one time we were in a planning meeting, and I was in Bermuda, and Raphael, I mean, that was the one time that I think I was getting the upper hand. And I mean, I was I was all over him.
I was taking a whipping. I was taking a whipping. I mean, I was taking it on the chin. It was brutal. I was covered up. I was covered up. You were wailing away. I remember that clearly.
But I remember there was a young lady who asked me, she's like, and who is that gentleman? And I explained what Raphael does for the organization and how, how integral he is to everything that we do.
Well, this young lady, let me just say, this young lady happened to be in the office area where you were having this conversation. We were having a phone conversation, and she was part of the staff at the church where you were, and so she was overhearing all of this, probably questioning everything she ever believed after listening to you talk the way you were talking to me. But go ahead. So she overhears this and she go ahead and what is
she's like, should you really talk to him like that? If shouldn't you have listened to him a little bit more and worked with him? And I laughed. We had another meeting about a few days later. I was there for 2 weeks at that particular speaking engagement, and we had another meeting a few days later. And this time, Raphael was in rare form. I mean, he was up one side and down the other side of me, man, just giving it to me. And she just had this look on her face that just said, "Oh, I feel sorry for Raphael," until I saw. And I share that because, we can laugh and we enjoy laughing. That is one of the components of our relationship. And that's a good thing. This is why he and I have been friends for nearly 30 years now, because we have that component of our friendship. But just like you have those good components, there's also some, other sides that annoys, that, frustrates, etc. And to be really clear, and that was the whole point. I got caught up in my illustration. That was the whole point, to become really clear about the type of relationships. And my son is pulling his hair out right now because he says that our illustrations go on too long.
Yeah. And here, let me add to that illustration for our executive producer of the show, who's screaming at us at the chat to stop. But my wife heard us. We were talking and preparing for the show and some other business issues. We were having a conversation yesterday, and she was in the office with me. And after we got off the phone, she said, she said, "I noticed that Robert tends to get impatient with you as well. You seem to push all the same buttons that you." Because I'm always telling her, you're not patient enough. You listen to me more. You get so impatient. You fly off the handle at everything that I say. But once you just you don't have to be so impatient. And so she used that as ammunition. She says, you've known this guy for 30 years and he sees you can't get a word out of your mouth before he's done listening to you. So she noticed that. So I wanted to thank you for that, by the way.
Oh man. So okay. Hey, man, I'm here to help create healthy marriages.
Yeah, I don't think you're helping. I don't think that's what you're doing in this instance, but I get it. I get it.
In my convoluted mind, that was helping. That's all I'll say. In my convoluted mind. But yeah, so we getting very clear about how the relationship is currently. Step number three is become clear about the type of leader you will need to be to foster. I'm sorry. Number 3 is become clear about the type of relationships that you want to have with your team as a whole and then with each individual. And especially when we're looking at the difficult ones. This is the type of relationship that I want to have. This is the type of relationship. And a lot of inappropriate workplace behavior, sexually inappropriate workplace behavior, is because leaders did not stop and say, what type of relationships do I want to have with my team? Do I want to be, flirting and stuff with my team? Do I want to create that kind of culture? Or do I want to be respectful and have boundaries and whatever, and being very clear about how you want it to look? And then it gets out of line real quick. It gets fast and furious, fast and furious, man. Next thing you look up, y'all are, you're falling all over yourselves. And I know that's an extreme example, but there are other examples as well. So saying this is the type of relationship I want to have, just general, but then also looking at the different members of your team. This is the type of relationship that I would love to have with Jim, type of relationship I would love to have, and being, as specific as possible about how that communication would look. And you don't just sit down and do this all at one time. This is a work in progress. This is a
Is
work.
some of that based on assessing strengths and weaknesses as well? Like I want to have a relationship with Tony that is collaborative and uh, a lot of brainstorming, because that's basically where his strength is, even though he tends to be dismissive, or it tends to kind of be brash, or it tends to think that he's the best brain in the room. But at the same time, I can see his value in how creative he may be, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of
No, that's exactly it. I
okay?
want
Okay.
I want to be more in a collaborative relationship with, I think you said Tony. I want to be in a more collaborative relationship with Tony. Um, I would like to be able to hear his ideas more.
Mm,
I like to express in various ways that he is a valued member of this team. Whatever it may be. You have your big general, how you
yeah.
are, just period. But then
Yeah.
this is what I want to be with Tony, because I noticed these things about our relationship. So this is what I want it to look like as I interact with Tony. And then
Okay.
I began to really think through that. Um, which leads us, of course, to number three, and that is number four, become clear about the type of leader you will need to be to foster those relationships. So this is the type of leader that I'm going to need to be to really have a healthy relationship with Tony, uh, which really means thinking through your internal guiding principles. And again, this goes back to the whole creative thing. And we're talking about difficult people, but also think about that with people who you gel with, because sometimes, and it is true, familiarity can breed contempt. And sometimes you can get a little too comfortable as a leader.
Mm,
Again, that goes back to the affairs. That goes back to some things that are inappropriate. And it doesn't have to always be inappropriate. It can just be where you're not viewed as a leader because you just got too comfortable.
yeah.
Again,
Or you're picking favorites, or
I love
things
that.
like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're showing favoritisms, etc. So even with the people that you just really get along well with, spend that same amount of energy, mental energy, in thinking about how you want the relationship to look.
Mm, mm.
Because one of the things I've seen, and I feel you've seen this, is, man, for 2 years, it is just going great. And then just out of nowhere, and I have coached so many leaders who say, I don't know what happened. We were getting along so well. Then we had to change this. We had to transition them into this role, and everything just fell apart. Well, that happens a lot when we don't really think through the type of relationship we want, so that during that transition, when a person has to be moved from the level of responsibilities they had to something that's considered less responsibilities,
Or more.
or more, they, man,
Mm.
I did not
Didn't
sign up for
ask
this.
for that. Didn't want to be managing people. That
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
I'm glad you threw that in there, so that now you have already, before that even comes up, because you don't know what's going to come up tomorrow, next year, whatever, but you're already thinking about how you want the relationship to look, so that when you do have to make these various transitions with that individual, you can then become strategic and creative about how you will continue to be that type of person even during this troublesome time. Because for some reason, man, if a person just hates you, y'all always hate each other. It is what it is. But man, when you have a good friend and it turns sour, you're like,
Mm.
oh, man, that cuts like a knife. That cuts like a
Yeah.
knife.
Yeah.
The next one, which is
Number
number
5.
5, establish contact with each individual significant team member. And by establish contact, that means literally pick up the phone and call them, invite them into your office. The reason that you want to look at the significant ones is because you're going to be they're going to have more access of your time because you're going to invite them to lunch. You're going to sit down and have brainstorming sessions with them. You're going to share with them stories and details about yourself. You're going to be casting the vision to them. You're going to be asking for their feedback. And you're going to be, again, constantly finding different ways to engage the individual and to just be in physical contact with the person. What can I do so that I can get some face time with them this week?
Mm.
And I know we always think about it from the opposite. We think about the very important person on our team and how do I get FaceTime with them to share my bright idea that's going to help me to get this next promotion. But how often does the leader think, how do I get FaceTime, important, valuable FaceTime with the person that's on my team?
Mm.
How do I talk to them, listen to them, ask them how things are going in their professional and personal life, allow them to vent, to think, to share, whatever it may be. How do I get that FaceTime with them? And so that's what we talk about by staying connected, is being creative in ways that we are actually going to talk. We're going to be in the same room. We're going to have one-to-one conversations where I'm actually talking to them.
Mm.
And I'll be honest with you, one of the ways it's easier to do when it's someone that you get along with well. One of the things that you actually have to do when it's individuals that you don't get along with well is to actually schedule it.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have to schedule. You actually have to put in your schedule. This day, I am going to do lunch with Tony. This day, I'm going to invite Tony into my office for a few minutes and just ask him how things are going with this project. What are his thoughts? This is one of the things that I'm thinking about. Can you give me your insight on it? I'm going to do that with Tony on Tuesday at 1 p.m.
You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about this, the effort that we have to make to stay in contact. And I want to reference a personal example, but I'm going to be very cryptic here because I don't want to give away identities or anything like this. But an individual that I know always had this perception about this other person that we both mutually know, and really had no sympathy for this individual. They just thought that this person had, was just had absolutely no sympathy for the person. But then they had a conversation with someone who was close to that individual and their listened to them talk about that individual, and it gave that person a lot of understanding about why that person is the way that they are. And they walked away with this completely new view of that person, saying, wow, I didn't understand that they were under that much pressure. I didn't understand that they were going through that. And now I can see why they are the way that they are. And it just made space for a lot more compassion
Wow.
and to build that baseline I think you were talking about. I think it just really cooled everything down to be able to say, okay, now I get it. I get why they are the way that they are. I can see why that would be, why they would feel the way that they feel, why they always interact the way that they interact, is because they are under an immense amount of pressure. They're basically just boxed in. They have nowhere to go. And I just didn't see that element of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that is, it is important to stay in contact. I get just what you're saying is you get to know your team, you get to know the individuals, you really start to peel away those layers and get an understanding. Okay, I get why this person is the way that they are. Now that I've made some time to be able to spend time with them, like I see what's going on here, and I'm in a better place to manage that.
I want to know people so that I can understand them.
Not so you can change them, right?
That's not I can
That's what
change
you.
so
That's
I
what you're talking
understand
about,
them. Yeah. I can't change
yeah,
them. The only person I can change is
right.
me.
Or
I want to
manipulate them,
know people.
I think that's the thing, right? The whole idea of the kind of keeping my friends close, my enemies closer kind of concept.
Yes, and because if I keep my enemies closer, I can manipulate them. And great, authentic leaders don't manipulate people. We've talked about that 101 times. They don't
Mhm.
manipulate people. But I want to know a person so that I can understand them,
Hmm.
so that I can know the them that makes them them, and so
Hmm.
that I can reveal the me that makes me me, and
Hmm.
and we can and we can have a mutual understanding of one another. But even though I can't make them understand me, to slow down their thinking long enough to understand me, I can slow down my thinking and take the time to understand them. And I can
Yeah.
ask them the right questions. I can spend time with them. People will reveal themselves just when you spend time with them.
Yeah.
Just getting to know people, it does tremendous things. And here's number six. We'll close it out here. Number six, and that is to maintain the contact. You know, consistency is the key, because what happens is you watch the Unboxed broadcast, you're a part of the Unboxed community, so you come to you read the 12-step book, you go into the peer support groups, all of that stuff, you get excited, you jump on top of it, and now you invite Tony to lunch, you feel good, you and Tony connect, the world is a wonderful place, and I'm done. I did my part. Woo! And you take your victory lap. You come back to the peer support group. You talk about how you did such a wonderful job with Tony and how y'all went out to lunch. And he told you about his mom and his dad. And you feel like you've always known him your whole life. And we are the world. We are the children. Kumbaya, blah, 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 blah. And then, we circle back around a year later and like, how's things with you and Tony? It's back to what it was a year ago before we went out to lunch that one time, before I did any of that, because I was not consistent. And so consistency is the key. This cannot be a strategy or a fad. Raphael just talked
Hmm.
about that. We're not here trying to manipulate people.
Hmm.
One of the things that Unboxed is we don't try to give strategies. You rarely hear us talk about this is how you can improve productivity. If
Hmm.
that's what you're looking for, then there are other leadership communities and other leadership programs that you can sign up for. We're not here to talk about if you give this carrot or if you use this stick, that'll get your team to meet their deadlines quicker. That's not what we're here about. And I'm not saying that that's not important. I'm just saying that that's not our shtick. What
Right.
we're here to do is to help the leader to become their best selves. And we're not here to give you some new fad, some new 1, 2, 3 step program that if you do this, the world will be a better place. What we're here to say is if you do this 1, 2, 3, it will help you to improve who you are. And that will help to create a better culture. We make no promises. We make no promises that everything is going to go smooth and everything's going to be perfect because you implement some of the principles and things that we talk about. What we are saying is you will see growth in your own life if you are consistent with this. You
Hmm.
will notice yourself being a better father, a better husband, a better mother, a better wife, a better boss, a better daughter, a better sibling, a better person in every facet of your life. And that's what is important. That's the real thing. The world needs better people. We have enough jerks in this world as is. We have enough people that are using other people to climb the ladder.
Hmm.
We have enough people who manipulate and take advantage of folk. What we really need are dynamic, progressive, get it done leaders who also have the right heart and who value and love people. And that is what Unboxed is about.
I well said, man. Well said. Well said. I don't want to add anything else to that. So I'm going to let that be the end of our show. I think that's a good place to leave it. Will you agree?
I think that's a good place to leave it.
All right. So as always, I'll say that it was just a pleasure to spend this time with you, Dr. Davis. I always walk away with more knowledge. I always feel like I come out of these broadcasts as a better person, uh, ready to go out into the world of my family, personal relationships, and professional relationships. I feel like my leadership is truly being unboxed here. So. The Unboxed broadcast is produced by Bobby Davis Jr., graphic and video design provided by Damon Mace, and marketing and promotion provided by John Sedano. Remember to visit our website at www.unboxedtolead.com. For Dr. Robert Davis, I'm RP Soriano. We look forward to seeing you at the next broadcast of Unboxed as we help you unbox the power and the potential of your leadership. Be well.
UnBoxed provides a full-service leaders peer support community that helps high-level leaders become more authentic leaders who build healthy workplace cultures and reach their personal life goals. To learn more and discover how we can take your leadership and your life to the next level, please visit our website at unboxedtolead.com. That's unboxed, the number 2, lead.com. Again, that's unboxed, the number 2, to lead.com.